The Holy Gospel according to Mark.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Jesus set out and went away to the region of Tyre. He entered a house and did not want anyone to know he was there. Yet he could not escape notice. But a woman whose little daughter had an unclean spirit immediately heard about him, and she came and bowed down at his feet. Now the woman was a Gentile, a Syrophoenician origin. She begged him to cast the demon out of her daughter. He said to her, "Let the children be fed first, for it is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs." But she answered him, "Sir, even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs." Then Jesus said to her, "For saying that, you may go. The demon has left your daughter." So she went home, found the child lying on the bed, and the demon was gone. Then Jesus returned from the region of Tyre and went by way of Sidon towards the Sea of Galilee, in the region of the Decapolis. They brought to him a deaf man who had an impediment in his speech, and they begged him to lay his hand on him. Jesus took him aside in private, away from the crowd, and put his fingers into his ears. And he spat and touched his tongue. Then looking up to heaven, he sighed and said to him, "Ephphatha," that is, "be opened." And immediately his ears were opened, his tongue was released, and he spoke plainly. Then Jesus ordered them to tell no one, but the more he ordered them, the more zealously they proclaimed it. They were astounded beyond measure, saying, "He has done everything well, and he even makes the deaf to hear and the mute to speak." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
You may be seated. I was just thinking in the reading from James, it says, "Go in peace, keep warm, and eat your fill." And it says, "And yet you do not supply their bodily needs." What is the good of this? This morning I'm supplying your bodily needs. I'd like you to take that to heart. I am grateful to be back from vacation. It was a wonderful time away with family, with my grandson, with my son and daughter-in-law, and a daughter-in-law who's pregnant. We're going to have an 8th grandchild coming in March. It was so life-giving. But on the way back, while I was in the Miami airport, far too many people were not wearing their masks. And it was quite disturbing to me. That's not taking care of other people's bodily needs. So consequently, I could easily have been exposed to Delta, and I am going to wear my mask the entire time when I'm with you for the next few Sundays, because I will not, if I carry that virus, I will not do something that would expose that virus to anybody else. I cannot do that. Anyway, it was so good to be away and so good to spend that life-giving time with my family. And so hard to say goodbye. But what I appreciated so much is the refreshing aspect of being away. Being away from deadlines. Being away from all the stuff that clutters my mind. Being away from all the stuff that clutters our daily lives. And just be. Just be and take in the beauty of creation and the wonder of and gift of family. Time like that makes my imagination and my creativity really bubble and thrive so watch out. This morning, I would like to ask you to use your imaginations as we try a little exercise. To begin, I ask you to sit back, close your eyes, and let go of the clutter and thoughts that are presently in each of your heads and probably your hearts. With your eyes still closed, let your imagination start working and begin to conjure up a picture in your mind of Jesus. Take a few seconds to think about the image of Jesus you are seeing in your mind's eye. Note what he looks like and what you see him doing. Now, I ask you to open your eyes, and I'm going to ask you a few questions. In your imagined picture of Jesus, does he have a full beard, or is he beardless? Is he calm, serene, pleasant, and peaceful? Is he wearing a white garment? Is he surrounded by children, maybe even holding one on his lap? Is he smiling? Are his arms outstretched in welcome? Is he performing some sort of miracle or offering food to the hungry? Be very honest with yourself. Did you respond with a yes to many of those questions? The truth of the matter is that for most of us, our image of Jesus was shaped by stories we learned in childhood and the pictures we have seen, pictures that were used primarily in children's Bibles. And quite frankly, most of those pictures depict a calm, happy, inviting, white, Northern European Jesus. Jesus was not white, Northern European. He was Mid-Eastern, and he was probably brown, okay? And if we take an honest look at the Gospels, we often see a very different picture of Jesus. First, as I said, he was not white and not Northern European. And in all the Gospels, we find stories where Jesus displays some very human, even unlikable characteristics. There are times when he really seems annoyed with the stupidity of his disciples. Quite honestly, there are several times when he seems annoyed with the stupidity of his disciples. And other times when he seems truly overwhelmed by the burden he is bearing. There are stories where Jesus is reclusive, grumpy, and even sarcastic. And today, we get one of those stories. In the chapters preceding today's story, Jesus has been performing miracles. He has fed the 5,000, and he has walked on water. He has been healing the sick and the demon-possessed, and there is no doubt he is seeking some much-needed rest. So today, as he seeks respite, we find him heading to the region of Tyre and Sidon, a land that is Gentile, pagan territory. While there, he is noticed and approached by a Syrophoenician Greek woman whose daughter has an unclean spirit. She begs him to cure her daughter, and Jesus replies, "Let the children be fed first, for it is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs." Now think about that. Jesus rebuffs this woman and dismisses her with a blatant ethnic slur. That's what it was. In biblical times, the word dog was commonly used as a derogatory insult. And the Gentiles were so despised and considered so unclean, the Jewish people referred to them as dogs. Anyway, Jesus' response to this foreign woman does not stop there. He also makes it clear that his own people, the Jews, should be fed first. He's saying it isn't right to take food that is meant for the Jews and give it to the dogs, the Gentiles. I have to say, this is probably not the image of Jesus we usually conjure up in our minds. As theologian and Professor David Lowe suggests, we want to think of Jesus as full-bodied, perfect, and immutable from birth, kind of like Athena springing full-grown from the head of Zeus. But if we are to take Mark's narrative seriously, never mind the incarnational and creedal affirmation that Jesus is fully human as well as fully divine, then perhaps we should not be surprised to see a development in Jesus' own recognition of God's vision for the world. After all, the profoundly expansive notion of a kingdom that included everyone, no exceptions, was completely and totally novel. And truthfully, it still is. What is so amazing about this story is that this woman does not back down. She does not become defensive, and instead of being offended or discouraged, she challenges Jesus and presses on. She has a sick daughter, and she wants healing for her daughter. So this culturally unconventional woman who is breaking all kinds of rules by even coming to Jesus in the first place uses Jesus' own words against him and bests him in the argument saying, fine, you can call me a dog, but even dogs get crumbs that fall from the table. This Gentile woman teaches Jesus. Imagine a Jesus who is so fully human that this Gentile woman teaches Jesus, a Jewish man, the true meaning of what he has just reminded his followers in the verses prior to this. If you remember last week's reading, which I haven't heard yet or seen, but I know Bob preached on it beautifully, Jesus had reminded the Pharisees, reprimanded the Pharisees, saying their social conventions, the purity codes, rules that had become religious ritual, were not what is important. What's important is the stuff that comes out of the human heart. Now I'm going to add in a note here. Stuff like caring enough to wear a mask. What's important is the stuff that comes out of the human heart. It is the stuff that comes from the heart that can either pollute and destroy relationships or compassionately build community. Today, this Gentile woman becomes, in a sense, a parable, a living parable in Jesus' very human experience, as she insists that social conventions should not stand in the way of compassion and helping those in need. And as this courageous, prophetic Syrophoenician woman confronts Jesus, he has a conversion experience. This woman of great faith changes Jesus. God works through her to bring change to Jesus and opens him up for ministry to the Gentiles. It is a huge turning point in Mark's gospel. And from then on, Jesus his ministry begins to focus on the Gentiles. Impressed by the woman's courage and faith, Jesus responds saying, "You're right, on your way, Your daughter is no longer disturbed. The demonic affliction is gone. This Gentile woman crosses the Jewish-Gentile boundary, a barrier established by human beings, a barrier that was created to separate and discriminate. Think about that barrier right now as we hear so much about the Afghan people who need refuge and who are coming here. We need to open our hearts to them. The barrier that had been created to divide people into categories of us and them has been called into question. This foreign woman draws for Jesus a bigger picture of who God is, and the good news that is embodied in Jesus now becomes good news that has the world as its focus. Jesus actually receives strength from this woman whose faith changes him, and he is forced to live into a broader understanding of his mission and ministry. The broadening of the heart and mind to include the others in life is one of the most difficult psychological maneuvers there is. And we see this so blatantly today. I find this to be a challenge we face each and every day. Far too often, we want to build walls to keep others out. Now, there are some things that are necessary, again, like wearing masks. It's not to keep others out, but it is to keep a virus from infecting other people. And that is a necessary, quote, wall. But far too often we build walls to keep others out. We work to exclude the others in our lives, whether it is within our family structures, our communities, or even our nation. And we tend to project what we don't like in ourselves onto the other. We tend to see the other as less than us, not as fully human, sometimes not even as loved by God. In today's reading, it is a woman who is considered and labeled other who helps Jesus grasp that in God, the barriers have been broken and torn down. In God, things are turned inside out and upside down. In God, no human beings are labeled as dogs, only beloved children. All are considered God's children. Scripture really does paint a very different picture of Jesus than the one we tend to often conjure up in our minds. Today we see Jesus in his full humanity, vulnerable, but open to being changed, open to being made new. And it is in his full humanity that we discover what divinity is all about. It is in Jesus' full humanity that we discover the God who loves and welcomes all people. Amen.